Well, thank you everyone so much for tuning in to the first ever Carpet Now podcast. And I cannot believe this, but of all the people in the world, Elicia, you get to be the first guest, which is so serendipitous because I have told many people over the years that you are literally the number one reason that I started this company many years ago. And so it just seems so perfect that you get to join me on our first podcast episode. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. That's awesome.
Yeah. So let's give everyone a quick intro to both Carpet Now and your business. And so I'm going to kick it to you first. So tell me what it is you do and how long you've been doing it, where you're based out of, all that.
I am a realtor and a broker and a speaker and a teacher and a mentor and everything real estate, investor, all of that stuff. But mainly a realtor and a broker. And I've been doing it for 25 years in 2 different states. And I love it. I'm in Austin, Texas, in Steiner Ranch, but I sell all over Austin.
That's so great. And for those that don't know, my name is Ben Hendricks. I am the owner and founder of Carpet Now. We specialize in putting carpet into mostly residential homes, but commercial as well. And really the genesis of our company started with this idea that we were getting people's homes ready for the market by putting in carpet quickly and affordably. And that all stemmed from our relationship, as I alluded to just a quick minute ago, which was, I remember you used to call me, and one of the days that the light bulb went off in my head that there could be a business here is you would call me and say, hey, Ben, I've got another listing. We got to get it ready for the market. The carpet looks terrible. The kids and dogs have destroyed it. And you used these words. You said, come bring the same carpet you always bring. Let's just get this done. And I thought, wow, this is what keeps happening. I literally keep getting called out by the same realtor to just fix up carpet before a house goes on the market. What if we could make a whole business idea out of this? Instead of doing all the floors, which at that time I did, I thought, what if we made a business that just focused on carpet, just servicing realtors? And so that was the genesis. And it, of course, morphed since then. But that's where it all came from, which is all of your referrals. So I owe you a million thank yous for basically, accidentally giving me the idea for what this business has now become. And,
there is a real need for carpet now. I mean, when you need carpet, you need it now.
Well, okay, so I'm not going to steal your thunder on this one. When I told you, I'm teeing you up here. When I told you, I was like, hey, I'm starting this new business. It's called Carpet Now. Share with everybody what your immediate answer was to name the business.
Okay, well, first of all, Ben and I are very close. I consider Ben like a little brother. And so we do joke around a lot. And this was many years ago. What year was this?
2018.
2018. I believe at the time, a volunteer Spanish teacher in my kid's school. And I was like, oh, let's come up with something catchy. And then I was like, what is today in Spanish? And I was like, is that hoy or ahoy? And then it turned into ahoy, which yeah. It was Carpets Ahoy, which then led into many other jokes and things like that.
Next thing I know, I remember you sent me what looked like Microsoft Paint's version of like a guy trying to sell pirate or a pirate trying to sell carpet.
Well,
and you were like,
yes,
this should be your whole
ahoy,
thing.
and then that turned into a pirate thing. So yes, I made you a silly little logo of a pirate standing on a roll of carpet, and it said Carpets Ahoy with your phone number on it, and then that turned into this.
Well, and the punchline to the whole thing, I thought, was when we bought our first office, our commercial space, my business partner, who's also a friend of both of us, Wade Lombard, he and I show up to the closing, and you literally popped into the room dressed as a pirate in full outfit. And this was no $5 outfit. Like, you must have spent time and money because you were decked to the nines. You were Jack Sparrow, the realtor.
Well, this is after numerous years of pirate jokes and talking like a pirate and Our text chain being named Carpets Ahoy. So yes, I felt that it was necessary to show up in a pirate costume.
It was so
So
perfect. So
yeah.
thank you for the endless pirate references. And I'm sorry, maybe Carpet Now was not the best choice. Carpet Ahoy may have been better, but
I mean, maybe from a branding
hindsight's
perspective.
2020.
But I still have that single gold hoop earring in my little tray in my car that I wore that day. And it makes me laugh every time because I think about that closing.
That's so awesome. Well, let's take a quick second here to talk about everything real estate right now, because it's 2025. We're several years into what it's not like a full downward spiral, but it's definitely been a roller coaster ride the last few years. And so let's kind of talk about the status of the market like right now. What are you seeing with buyers and sellers? What's different now than what was true several years ago? Kind of just give us a real good snapshot on everything in the market right now.
Well, Austin had a good run of almost 13 or 14 years of a seller's market. And then we went into a hyper seller's market during COVID. And now we're in a much more balanced market. Some people are calling it a buyer's market. I think it is a little bit of a buyer's market. But, I think there's this real wrong perception that it's a terrible market. I have people that call me literally every day and they're like, oh, I take over a lot of expired listings and they're like, oh, our agent told us it's just a bad market. And this isn't going to surprise you because, I'm very direct. And my response to that every time is there are no bad markets. There are just bad agents. Because truly there are a lot of agents who have never worked in a market where you actually have to work. And there's a lot of agents who don't have enough business that they have the courage to have the tough conversations. So they're going into these conversations and not giving an accurate picture of the market. And then they're massively overpricing, they're sitting on the market, and it's giving us just real inaccurate picture of what the market is. You just need to be able to correctly read the market. You need to understand what the comps mean. And I think a lot of people don't understand that that's not something that they teach in real estate school. You don't really learn anything real estate related in real estate school. You learn like definitions and stuff. And the ability to truly analyze what's going on comes from experience, comes from having this same conversation thousands of times over. I've been doing it for a quarter of a century now. And I'm pretty good at going in and having the tough conversations and explaining how we evaluate comps in a market like this. And I'm selling houses left and right, and I'm doing it for pretty good margins within list price to sale price ratio.
And I know everything you said is true because you and I have worked together multiple times. You've helped me buy and sell personal homes. And it's so true when you said a second ago that you're very direct with your clients, because there were things that you told my wife and I, and it was kind of like, we were like, I don't want that to be true. But I also knew your history, and I knew that you wouldn't say it unless you had, data and experience behind it. And I found that every time that you told us, when to zig or when to zag, it was always accurate. And so I just want to commend you on you really have been doing it a long time. And I know that you work insanely hard for your clients. And probably someone might call you, OCD when it comes to how detailed you are with your, contracts and protecting your customers. And so, yeah, I totally applaud you for, having that totally dialed in. And that's what makes you one of the best realtors probably in Texas. So that is awesome.
Thank you. I'll take all the adjectives. I do consider myself to be an extreme expert in contracts. I mean, I was telling one of my kids yesterday that is one of the best compliments you can give me, is to tell me, you can tell me that I'm skinny, or you can tell me that I'm smart. And those are the two best things you can tell me. But I pride myself on being an absolute ninja and knowing our contracts inside and out. And when I tell you that I have so many of my best friends are top mega producers, and they call me every time with their contract questions. And they always, whenever they don't, their response always is, why didn't I just call Elicia? Because I'm going to know it off the top of my head. I'm going to know the strategy. I'm going to know how you should explain it to both sides. But yeah, that's very, very few agents can do that. And I think the public massively underestimates the value of that in a realtor, because almost never does anybody ask me anything about my contract knowledge when I go on listing appointments, or my experience for that matter.
Yeah, that's a good Good call out. So, what are the questions you wished that your potential, when you're interviewing with a potential client, what are the questions you wish they asked?
What are the outs in the contract we need to be concerned with? And what is your strategy for protecting us against those? Because our contracts in Texas are very, very, very buyer protective. They're made to protect buyers. We have outs in the contract that, if you're not careful, will run up to 3 days before the end of the contract. The last thing you want is to have your house packed up on a truck and have the buyer be able to back out and keep your earnest money. And I would say maybe only one deal a year do I ever see anybody on the seller side doing the protective things that I do versus me on the seller side. I keep buyers' their earnest money all the time, because I set my sellers up for success so that those buyers cannot back out of the contract. I certainly don't want to keep other people's money, but it is there for a reason, to protect the sellers against their financial loss if they fall out of escrow. And nobody ever asked me that. Nobody ever asked me how many years I've been doing it. Nobody ever asked me what it means that I'm a broker and not just a sales agent. It's crazy.
So I'll be honest, I don't fully know that I could answer that question. So what is the difference between a broker and an agent?
So to become a real estate agent, you have to work under a broker, and you have to have a certain number of experience, a certain number of transactions, and the test is actually hard. The sales test, I'm pretty sure my kids could pass just from living with me for the past 18 years. It's very basic. Like I said before, it's just definitions. There's no real tactical information. There's no negotiating. There's very basic contract stuff. So yeah, it's hard to become a broker, but I'll tell you that there are a lot of brokers who still, they pass the test and they do not further their knowledge. I can tell you that I'm a broker under a broker, which is what an associate broker means. And I think those are the best you can be, because you're getting the knowledge of the broker without the broker having all the time constraints of having to run a company and do all of that stuff and all of the back end. And I can tell you that whenever I have an issue, I will usually, just for compliance sake, loop in my broker, and they'll usually say to me, "You've been doing this longer than me. You're good. Thanks for keeping me in the loop." Like, there's just, frankly, I know more than them. So you can be a broker in 4 years. I've been a broker for 20 plus years. So I not only have that license, but I have the quarter of a century of experience behind it. I've seen thousands of iterations of questions and lawsuits and almost lawsuits and issues, and I've seen how they've been resolved. And that's how you really get to the nitty gritty of the contract and understanding. And I don't think people realize that how gnarly a transaction can be when you have someone that doesn't know the contract. Because I would say the gnarliest deals that I'm in, almost every time, it's because the other side didn't know the contract and didn't appropriately set the expectations with their clients.
Wow. There's so much there's like whoosh. But that's why you hire the professionals. You know, you hire someone that clearly has been doing it a long time. They know what they're doing, and they can lead you through what seems like a simple process, but there are a lot of things to watch out for, obviously, when buying and selling one of the largest investments people make in their entire lives.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to one of the things you said earlier, which is, you said this is leaning towards a buyer's market, specifically, you know, here in Austin or Texas. So when we are in a buyer's market, what are the things that you're telling your sellers? Like, when you go into a home, like, what do you look for in the home, and what are you telling them? You know, how do you set your sellers up for the best possible outcome when it is a buyer's market?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking that, because it's so important to know what is blowing up deals currently, so that you can, just like the contractual things that you need to button up in the front, you need to button the house up in the front. And so I'm seeing so many deals right now blowing up over HVACs, over roofs. We've had a lot of hailstorms lately. And so I never recommend getting a full inspection report before you put the property on the market, because you have to disclose the entire report for the next 4 years. And I don't know if you've ever seen an inspection report, but even on a new construction house, they're 40 pages, and it's just nonsense. And so it's not that you necessarily would hide anything from your buyers, but there's just an emotional impact of receiving such a large document before you go under contract versus after. But I will tell my sellers, get your roof inspected, get your HVAC inspected. You know, let's walk around the house and let's just look under your sinks, make sure there's nothing leaking. Let's, do these walk and talks through the house and look for red flags. People that maybe had a leak 10 years ago and still have a spot on the ceiling, let's get that fixed up. We just don't want to create any doubt in the buyer's minds, because there are 10 or 15 more houses just like yours. And if they get any kind of negative impression on, even if it's nothing, they're just going to go to the next house. So we want to eliminate all that on the front end.
And so that, yeah, I hear you. And that definitely covers the outside. I'd be remorse if I didn't ask about the inside of the house, wink, wink, just kidding. But what do you find on the interior of a home? Like, what are things that are turnoffs for buyers when they're walking through a house? And like you said, comparing one house to the next, in a neighborhood. What about the interior?
Definitely needs to be polished and staged appropriately. And carpet is one of, something that's important. Back when it was a seller's market, we gave a lot more carpet credits. But now I would say replace your carpet, because, and a lot of people are like, oh, what if they're going to rip it up? You can't think about that. What if they're going to do anything after they move in? I mean, it needs to be just polished when they walk in. You can't have any bad smells. It can't be dirty. It can't look outdated. There's just too much competition. So make sure it's clean. Make sure it smells good. Make sure it's easy to show. Make sure it's, you have the right sized furniture in there. Make sure your furniture placement is good. Make sure there's not anything distracting in there. So yeah, it needs to be the total package inside and out.
It seems to be, I'm going to run something by you and then you tell me if this is accurate. It seems like over the years, over and over again, the two largest impacts people can make that have the highest ROI when it comes to preparing their home for selling is paint and carpet. And I've seen you say that to a number of clients that we've been with at the same time. And you've told your different sellers, hey, you need to paint the living room and these bedrooms for, different reasons, and you need to replace your carpet. And that just seems to give it a really quick facelift for pretty good return on investment. Would you agree with that still?
Yeah, I think those are your low dollar things that really pack a powerful punch. Carpet, paint, black mulch can solve all the problems in your yard. If you're trying to make a high impact change, for low dollar, for sure, paint and carpet.
Wow. And so what's your opinion on the difference between someone saying, hey, let's just give them a credit versus let's go through, the expense up front of replacing the carpet or painting these walls? Because it seems like a lot of people would say, well, why do anything at all? Let's just let the new buyer do whatever they want. They're going to change things anyways. So yeah. Talk me through that. What are the pros and cons of those different ideas?
I think it's kind of like it needs to be evaluated in every property, because it's market specific, it's price specific. But like I said, in a seller's market, we didn't care. We'd give you a carpet credit or we'd give you nothing at all, because we could probably get away with that. We'd probably just be like, here, take this crappy house and you're going to pay top dollar and you're going to like it. But those days are over. And so what people don't realize is that you don't want to give people the impression of a badly or low maintained home. And carpet is one of those things that people are like, oh my gosh, this carpet is disgusting. What else are they not doing? Have they ever changed their air filters? Do they do anything to this house? And so it's one of those things that maybe it's an extremely well maintained house, but you've got 4 dogs, but that's just the impression people are going to get. People are looking for the negatives because there's so much competition. So you just don't want to give anybody any negative impression these days in this market, because they will just move on to the next. So my answer is completely different than it was in 2021 or 2022 or whatever. We would possibly say, we're going to give this carpet credit. We put some carpet samples in the home, stuff like that. But it's just not the market for that anymore. You've got to go ahead and replace the carpet. You don't want people thinking that you're nasty people, because the next thing they're gonna jump to is like, this house is crap. They haven't done anything to it.
So let me float something else by you, because I genuinely am curious to see if you agree with this next analysis that I've seen or not. And by the way, feel free to disagree.
Oh, I always do.
I know. I don't have to worry about you being honest with me. It seems like there are two main kind of buyers. There's people that want to either buy a home basically ready to go, move in ready, nothing to do, no punch list, just, hey, that house is, we can move into it, we can put our furniture in the day we close on it, and on we go down the road. And then there's the other kind of buyer, which is looking for the deal. They don't mind a house that's got holes in the wall or holes in the floor, and they want a project, but they want a project because they know they're going to get a deal. So they're buying something knowing I'm going to invest in it, I'm going to flip it, or I'll get to make it my own. But what that also means is these are because these are two different types of buyers, this changes who you're trying to attract and at what price point you think you can sell the home for. So would you agree that most buyers fall into one of those two categories?
Yes. And I think you hit the nail on the head, though, when you were describing the second type of buyer is the buyers that have the perception that needs a lot of work are looking for a deal. So the sellers will be like, oh, if carpet's going to cost $5,000, we are going to credit $5,000. But the buyers are like, no, we want $7,500 because we want it to feel like a deal if we're going to take this on. And so that's why if you can, as a seller, it makes so much more sense to do it because it's almost like I told some people recently who called themselves savvy investors, but they didn't want to do anything to their house. And I was like, they told me that they used to flip houses. I'm like, think of this as a flip. Someone else is going to flip it and make the money on it, or you can flip it right now and make the money on it. But you're not going to sell this as something that needs work and get the best deal that you're going to get. I mean, and some people just don't have the money. They don't have the cash flow. They can't do it. And it is what it is. But if you can afford it, you need to do those things 100% because what costs $5,000 to you in the buyer's mind is $7,500 or $10,000 or $15,000. You just don't know.
I have found it to be closer to the 10,000 range, meaning whenever people have said to us, hey, we're going to give the buyer a carpet allowance, you know what that buyer really wants is they don't want a carpet allowance of the lowest quality carpet. They want a carpet allowance of a luxurious carpet. So what would cost a seller $3 a square foot to replace their carpet ends up costing them $5 or $6 a square foot because the buyer wants something good. If they're going to go through the hassle, they want to make sure they're getting the highest return on as possible that makes it worth it for them to go through the hassle. And so, as you pointed out, though, not everyone has the funds to do these repairs, which is why it's so important to find someone that offers a pay-at-close program. Yep. And that was one of the things that you told me way early on in the beginning when I said, hey, here's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be creating a business that, really markets to realtors so that realtors will refer us. And you said, if you're going to do that, you better make sure you have a pay-at-close option. And we do. And we've been able to get a lot of business this way because, whether it's you or any other realtor, they can bring us in and we can tell this seller, hey, you can have carpet completely for free, zero down right now, and then we get paid from title at closing. And it totally takes the pressure off of them having to come up with all this extra cash or finance it, which, as you know, financing something during a home transaction is not a great idea because it really affects your credit and it can affect your rate on the next house you buy. So there's a lot of moving parts here where pay at close is really the game changer when it comes to getting your house ready for the market in a way that doesn't put you in a pinch.
It's so important. And I would say probably at least once a day, I see somebody on one of the many real estate groups or text threads or whatever asking for some vendor of some sort, whether it's a roofer, a painter, a floor person, a carpet person, all of that stuff for someone who will pay at close because so many people need it right now.
How many vendors do you think offer pay at close?
I don't know because I don't pay attention to anybody but carpet now. I really don't. I'm so loyal. I have no idea.
Remind me to Venmo you $20 later for
Thank
saying
you.
that. Thank you. But Elicia, are there any funny stories you could share, whether it comes to buying or listing? Have you had some crazy things happen in the last few years that you could share with us?
Oh my gosh, I'm trying to think. There's always crazy things. Lots of crazy people. I don't know.
Anyone dressed as a pirate when you went to go sell a home?
I recently dressed up as a pirate for a closing.
You're the crazy.
Most of the crazy that happens in transactions is not fun story crazy. It's batshit crazy people, whether they're the clients on your side or the other side or the other agents. I mean, it's like the wild, wild west in real estate right now. We've doubled the number of agents that are in the country in Austin. And, yeah, I don't know. I don't have to think of that. Have I told you any? Refresh my
Oh, you
memory.
probably have. Well, I'll tell you this. I remember many years ago, before I even started this business, you and I were working on a deal. And this is probably an extreme example, but it still gets the point across. And at the time, there was a $800,000 home that was listed for sale in Steiner. And I remember you told me, you said, this house, I cannot sell this house for the life of me. And I keep trying, but you said, I keep telling the sellers, I said, you need to put in paint and carpet. You said, because the best offer that they were getting was over $100,000 less than the listing price. And they finally listened to your advice. They brought in us. We put in, it was a very, very large house. It was 4,000 or 5,000 square feet. And of course, that meant a lot of carpet. So they spent, I remember it was $5,000 or $6,000 on carpet. Then they spent several $1,000s repainting the kitchen and the living room. So I think all in, maybe it was like 20 or 25,000 to do all of the stuff that they were doing to get the home ready for the market. And then the very next weekend after those remodel projects were done, you said they got full asking price the very next weekend.
So yeah, I totally remember that. That happens frequently, that, those people ended up spending such a small amount of money and making $100,000 more. So, listen to your realtor people. If your realtor's good, don't listen to all of them. It's like I said, there's bad realtors out there.
And how would someone know if they're dealing with a bad realtor? What's a couple of the red flags that would stand out?
I think that if you're constantly having a lot of questions, that's one thing I pride myself on, is giving you a lot of information up front. I don't want you to have any questions, because that creates anxiety for everybody. I think if there's just a lot of little mistakes, I think that when you ask them a question, they don't immediately have the answer. I think those are all red flags. I'm going to an appointment this afternoon where it's a $1.7 million property, and it's been listed with another agent for 39 days. And these people have just had a nagging feeling throughout the whole thing that just things were not right. And, I had to be real careful with the conversation, because ethically we're not allowed to badmouth other agents. But I said, there's quite a few mistakes in your listing. There's quite a few massive missed opportunities in the marketing and things like that. So I don't know. I think sometimes you have to trust your gut. And I think that when I fix a lot of these major mistakes and get in there and market their thing properly, it's going to sell. But yeah, I think mostly, I think there's a lot of agents out there who do a lot of dumb stuff to try to appease their sellers, and it's not things that make the house sell, like brokers opens. Nobody that is selling houses has time to go on a 4-hour brokers open. That is really just to appease you and have tacos with your friends and make you think like, hey, I'm busy, I'm doing something for you. Brokers opens don't sell houses. It's just, nobody has time for that. The people that go on brokers opens are the new agents who are filling their time trying to get content for their social media. They don't know anything about your house. They don't have any buyers. If they have buyers, they should already know about your house. So a lot of stuff like that, that's just kind of filler crap, should be a red flag.
And so talk to me about marketing. How is marketing different today than it was 5 years ago when it comes to trying to promote or sell your listing? Like, what's your secret sauce, if you don't mind me asking?
I don't think it is different, but I think that, and like I said earlier, I take over a lot of expired listings. And the number one issue that I see is that agents are describing the homes and they're not marketing the homes. And so you go into a neighborhood and every house in the neighborhood is $1 million, and you spend half of your description describing it as granite countertops and hardwood floors and plantation shutters. Well, every house has that. Nobody cares about that. What I need you to do is tell me who is the most likely buyer for this house and market the property towards that. I think that also God, one of the worst things in real estate right now is this expectation of feedback that sellers have. And I go into every listing appointment and I say, we don't care about feedback. You need to never hire an agent, a listing agent, who does not already have the ability to tell you every piece of negative feedback you're going to get about your house. And so the problem is you get these agents who don't sell much real estate, and they're going to go in and they only want to tell you all the great things about your house because that is what most people want to hear. And they want to hear that you're going to be able to market those things, but you need to know how they're going to be able to market away from the negatives. And if they don't already know what those negatives are, and a lot of agents won't even know because they haven't worked with 1,000 buyers, they don't know those little nuanced things. They don't know that there's a whole subset of buyers that will not buy your house if it's at a T in an intersection. Half the buyers in Austin are not going to buy your house if it's south facing. They're not going to know that buyers don't like this floor plan. They're not going to know that, this thing over here that's next to your house is going to be a turnoff for a lot of things. You need to be able as a seller to be ready to hear the negative and want to hear the negative. And as an agent, you need to be able to deliver it, empathetically and in a nice way. And from the perspective of, we already know these things. Let's change the things we can. The other things that we can't, we do not need to be reactionary about. And so you'll see a lot of agents who don't have any skills, they'll use this constant negative feedback to get price reductions. And what I see a lot also on the real estate boards is people, oh my gosh, it's so frustrating. Buyers agents will not give me feedback to help my sellers. Well, guess what, guys? It's not the buyer's agent side, their job to help you as the seller. It's your job as the listing agent. And so you also need to take anything a potential buyer is taking with a grain of salt, because those people may be working up to an offer and want to negotiate against you. So why are they going to tell you anything great about your house? As a buyer's agent, I don't give feedback. And if you press me a million times for feedback, I'm just going to tell you anything off the top of my head. Now, imagine that you called me 5 times and I got annoyed and I finally was like, yeah, they didn't like the granite. And you go and spend $15,000 and change the granite. And it really, it wasn't the granite. I just got tired of you calling me. It's not that I'm lying to you, but that is not the material fact that made us not buy your house. But I'm representing the buyer. I have a fiduciary duty to the buyer, not the seller. So my feedback should be inconsequential to you, but you need to have a listing agent who already knows and has the experience to be able to tell you the stuff you don't want to hear, because that's how you market away from that.
Wow. That's thank you for sharing that. That is such good insight. And I'm thinking back as you're talking about the things that you told me, even when I was buying my current home, and you would give me feedback, hey, just so you know, if you make that choice, when you sell your house, whether that's 5, 10, 15 years from now, people will not like it if you do X. And I remember thinking I don't know if she's right. And then I thought, she's always right.
Remember, you didn't want a 3-car garage?
I know. That's so dumb.
Can you imagine now if you didn't have one? I know you have 4 kids. You have all that crap.
The 2 things is you told me to do a 3rd-car garage. And then you told me to put a door in between the laundry room and the master closet.
Yeah.
And
I was so emphatic on that one. I told you if in a month you hated it, I would pay you back for it. And you did it. By
the way, that literally those are the 2 best things you could have ever said. And it, changed our life inside and out, just with those 2 little simple things when it comes to living in our home with the 4 kids that we have.
Yes.
So thank you. If you don't mind, can I ask you for a testimonial about your experience with Carpet Now? Can you tell us about how we've worked with you in the past and what that was like and what difference that made for your buyers and sellers?
Well, I love Carpet Now so much. I have Carpet Now advertisements on my license plate instead of for my own business. So it is. Y'all are the bomb. I mean, I wouldn't trust anybody else gosh, in real estate, so much of our vendors and the people that we refer, if there's any drama with it at all, it always blows back on us on Realtors. And not just in the actual fact of the timing, if you don't get the carpet in, we can't get the house on the market as planned, or if the carpet's ugly, then it's going to affect my marketing, but everything about it. If I refer Carpet Now to someone and they get someone nasty on the phone, or they don't get a call back, or they're late, or any of that stuff, that always blows back on me. And I run a tight ship, and if I hear about that once, maybe twice with a vendor, I'm never going to use them again. And I've never had that happen with Carpet Now. And in fact, it's always the opposite. People are always raving about Carpet Now. So I consider you guys to be a part of my team. And anybody that doesn't perform doesn't get to be on my team very long.
Well, thank you so much. And I know exactly what you mean when you said, hey, if someone basically lets me down, I will never refer them again. And I've often said this when we've gone in to do presentations in front of other, realtors. I will stand up there and say to them, hey, I understand how fragile referrals are. And I know that if you refer me one time and we don't deliver, you will never speak to us again. And you always get this nod, and people are like, yep, you were reading my mind. And so, it's a big deal when you're asking realtors to introduce you to their clients. And so that's one thing that we have hammered into our culture here at Carpet Now, which is you have to understand every referral is hypersensitive, and you better be on time. You better do what you say you're going to do. And if a problem does occur, be all over it. And as long as you're communicating with everybody, including the realtor, including the, client, the homeowner, as long as you're communicating, most things can get worked out if there is an issue. It's, the problems really occur when people aren't communicating, and then things can spiral way out of control.
I don't think that a lot of tradesmen realize that their business would go 100 times if they just improved and increased their communication. And I have dumped many a vendor just for lack of communication, because especially within the real estate space, so many things are fast moving, and you usually have a domino effect of things that are relying on the person before it. And so, for example, I just dumped a roofer I've used for years because I gave him 2 or 3 chances, and he would say, we're in a 7-day option period. And I'm like, can you get out there tomorrow and look at this roof? And he says, yes. And then he doesn't go. And he ends up going the next morning, and it's not that big of a deal, but you left us hanging for 12 hours to where we were like, do we need to call another roofer? We're in a time crunch. And a simple text of, hey, I got hung up. I promise I'll be there tomorrow by 9 and get you a report by 10 would have made all the difference. And it's just mind boggling that people don't realize it. And you guys are fantastic with your communication.
Thank you. It's talking about leaving people hanging. I remember, I believe this was one of the jobs that you sent us. This was several years ago. And we had an installation set for, say, a Thursday, whatever it was. And it was Thursday morning, and we realized that the freight company had made a mistake and the material was still in Dallas. It was not in Austin. And I remember telling my sales guy that day, I was like, go to Dallas right now and go get that carpet, because we're putting this carpet in today, because they've got photos tomorrow. They've got a cleaning lady set up the next day after that. They have to get this house on the market, and we're not going to call that realtor and say we can't get it done. So we did. We drove all the way to Dallas, got the material, came back, got it done that afternoon, and just were able to communicate with the homeowner, say, hey, there was a hiccup, but here's what we're doing about it. We're still going to get it in today. You don't have to reschedule anything else. And so that's the kind of stuff that we're always, emphasizing with our employees is, man, you got to make stuff happen. Because when you're working with realtors, they do not mess around. And the best realtors are very organized, and they have a lot of things planned out, not just.
I know. And we're very busy. And I don't think people realize, if that would have happened on a day where I was showing 12 buyers and I had buyers in the car all day long, can you imagine the stress that would have put on me if I had to then, while my buyers were looking at clients, be like, hold on, I got to make 22 phone calls because I got to push photography. I got to push this. I got to call my sellers. I got to do all that stuff. And it's so appreciated. And I make mistakes sometimes too, but my number one thing is I'm not ever going to come to you a problem without having probably already solved it, or at least come to you with multiple solutions. And there's going to be an apology, and there's going to be an owning it and an explanation. Like I said, it doesn't happen very often, but there's a way to handle things. And, you can move forward with people and still have their trust and their appreciation if you just properly handle when things come up.
Absolutely. Well said. And so as we try and land the plane here, because I know you've got to go, you've got homes to sell, and you literally came from a listing to jump on this podcast. So thank you. And so I wanted to give the listeners opportunity. Where can they find you?
Everywhere. Just Google me. Google me. Right. You can find me. You can just Google my name. It's right here, probably backwards on your screen. Elicia Michaud. I've got about 100 pages of Google because I've been doing this for 25 years. Steiner Ranch Info. You can find me there. You can find me on Instagram, the Elicia Michaud. I'm everywhere. I'm not hard to find.
I love it. Hey, no good realtor should be hard to find, right?
Correct. Right.
So, well, thank you, Elicia, so much. You're a great friend, both personally and professionally. And thank you for being on our first Carpet Now podcast.
I'm flattered.
You were the perfect guest. So thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge and insight. And I hope you are able to go close some more listings later today. So thanks again for joining us. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
See ya.